President Macron has 4 years to do something. He might have realized the urgency of the thing, and he managed to successfully to reform the pension, and the retirement age. Could he also reform what is needed, and the police needs reforming as well?
Yeah.
So he's got 4 years, or France has 4 years.
Now, France, and things appear to be calming down somewhat after 5 days of rioting across the country. The protests broke out, of course, after the shooting of a teenager during a traffic stop in Paris last Tuesday. Let us say hello to Agnes Poirier, an author and Times columnist. Agnes, hi.
Good evening. Bonsoir.
Well, bonsoir to you, of course. It's been a very, very worrying time. The riots at the moment seem to be calming down, but, of course, the resentments, they run very deep.
Well, they do, and what is really concerning is that it's difficult now, today to really distinguish between the political anger which exists and which started the whole riots, and gratuitous and a very high level of violence and looting, which has nothing to do with the death and the murder, I should say, of that young man last Tuesday. And this is becoming a recurrent feature of French protest. French anger or protest the French way is a driving force of French democracy, is what we do, and we do it well, and something we've done for since the French Revolution, to say it simply. But the problem is that in the last 10, I would say 20 years, it is often accompanied by an increasing level of violence, and it also mirrors the polarization of French politics, and I would say it's a vicious circle, and two, it's not going into the right direction.
Yes. I mean, how much has this damaged the administration of Emmanuel Macron? He's calling for a massive police presence to stay on the streets. Is he managing to strike somehow the right tone in addressing the country?
Well, I mean, he's holding the fort in the sense that is at the center. But since the disappearance, the collapse of the democratic or mainstream right and the mainstream left from French politics, in the last 6 or 7 years, is just alone, for better and worse. And we have as the main opposition the far right and the far left. The far left refused to appeal for calm, which was irresponsible, in my opinion, and the far right asked for more police violence, as if it was the answer to an insurrection against police violence. So in a way, I thought, so far, he hasn't called for a state of emergency. He was very swift, and so was the justice system, to condemn the murder, the shooting of that young man. Less than 36 hours after the event, the policeman was charged for first-degree murder, remains in custody, and I can tell you he's not going to go back home anytime soon. The investigation will be quite swift, and he was, in the past, French presidents would have said, well, we need to wait for the investigation, and would have, support the police. He wasn't like this at all. It was quite surprising. He immediately said this is inexplicable, inexcusable, unjustifiable. But it certainly was not enough to spare France the riots that we've seen, which are different from the 2005 riots for many reasons, perhaps because there was not social media then. But it looks as if they've been much more violent, but also they're not going to last 3 weeks. It's sort of burnt itself
Yes.
out.
Well, one hopes the violence would have burnt itself out. After violence on this scale, as you say, transmitted across France and across the world by social media, what will be the political fallout? An obvious guess would be that it might benefit the far right in France. Will that be what happens?
Oh, yes. I mean, Marine Le Pen doesn't have to do anything. She just because when she speaks up, then people realize how incompetent she is. So she doesn't say anything. She, unlike the far left, she looks or sounds responsible. But certainly at the National Assembly, her MPs are just trying to act responsible. And but the next presidential elections are in 4 years' time, so a lot of things can happen. And also, President Macron has 4 years to do things. You know, in terms of deprived areas in France, which are not that deprived when you think that public spending accounts for 57% of the GDP in France, higher than in Sweden. So, you know, billions of euros have been invested in those areas. You know, things have been done in the last 20 years. But when President Macron was elected, he commissioned a vast report, and very ambitious plans were laid out to him and explained to him of things that should be done in the banlieues, we call them in France. And he unfortunately rejected them for costs reasons. Also, you know, something happened in 2017. There was a loosening of firearms use for the police. That has to be revised because obviously the wording of it means that it's very loosely worded, and it's really left to interpretation, very different interpretation if you're a policeman or if you're a legislator. So President Macron has 4 years to do something. He might have realized the urgency of the thing, and you know, he managed successfully to reform the pension, you know, and the retirement age. Could he also reform what is needed, and the police needs reforming as well?
Yeah.
So he's got 4 years, or France has 4 years.
Agnes Poirier, author, Times columnist. Thank you.